The Appalachian Mountains are old. Not just old in terms of human history, but ancient in a way the soul recognizes before the mind does. They are the oldest mountains on Earth, and they have spent millions of years watching things come and go. When you spend enough time in the deep hollows, you realize that the silence isn't empty. It's heavy. It's a physical weight that presses against your eardrums, a warning that you are a guest in a place that has forgotten the sun. My name is Elias, and for 12 years I was a park ranger in the Blackwood district. I used to laugh at the tourists who asked about the knot deer or the whistles in the dark. I don't laugh anymore. I don't even go outside after the sun hits the ridge. There are rules here. Every local knows them. If you see something in the trees that doesn't look right, look away. If you feel like you're being watched, don't run. Just walk steady. And the most important rule? If you hear a voice calling your name from the brush, even if it sounds like your mother, your brother, or your best friend, no, you didn't. You keep your eyes on the trail and you keep moving. Because in Appalachia, the woods don't have a voice of their own. They have to steal one, and once they have yours, they never let go. It happened on a Tuesday in late October. The air was crisp, smelling of wet cedar and the metallic tang of an approaching cold front. I was finishing a perimeter check near the old coal mines, a place the locals call the Throat. The Throat wasn't just a geographical landmark, it was a wound in the earth that never quite healed. The air there always felt recycled, like it had been sitting in the lungs of the mountain for centuries before being exhaled. I remember stopping to adjust my pack, and for a moment the fog thinned, just enough to see the entrance of the mine. It didn't look like a standard excavation, it looked like a mouth held open by rusted timber teeth. My grandfather used to say the miners didn't quit because the coal ran out. They quit because the echoes started talking back. I had laughed at the time, dismissing it as the superstition of men who spent too much time in the dark. But standing there with the silence ringing in my ears, I felt a vibration in the soles of my boots. It wasn't seismic. It was rhythmic, like a slow, wet heartbeat coming from deep within the shaft. I checked my equipment, thinking there was some gas leak causing my sudden dizziness, but the air was clean. The only thing alive in that clearing was the fear rising up the back of my neck. The fog had rolled in early, thick and white, swallowing the hemlocks until the world felt no bigger than the 10 feet illuminated by my flashlight. I was about halfway back to my truck when I heard it. A whistle. 2 notes, sharp and clear. It sounded exactly like the signal my brother and I used to use when we were kids. But my brother hasn't been in these woods in 20 years. He lives in Chicago. I froze. My lizard brain was screaming at me to run, but my training told me to stay calm. "Who's there?" I called out. My voice sounded small, fragile against the damp moss and the towering stone. The woods didn't answer with words. Instead, the whistle came again. Closer this time. It wasn't coming from the trail ahead, it was coming from the trees to my left. I swung my light, the beam cutting through the fog like a blade. I didn't see a person. I saw a deer. At least I thought it was a deer. It was standing behind a massive white pine, its head peeking out from behind the trunk. But the proportions were wrong. The neck was too long, stretching upward like a snake. And the eyes, they weren't on the sides of the head like a prey animal. They were in the front, forward-facing, predatory, and they were human. It wasn't just the eyes that defied nature, it was the way the skin was draped over its frame. It looked like wet parchment stretched too thin over a collection of mismatched bones. There were no joints where there should have been. Its limbs moved with a fluid, terrifying grace that suggested its skeleton was made of something more flexible, more sinister than calcium. And then there was the smell. It didn't smell like a wild animal. It smelled like a funeral parlor that had lost power in the height of summer, cloying, sweet, and metallic. It was the scent of something that lived on the edge of life, sustained entirely by the things it stole from others. I realized in that moment that I wasn't looking at a creature of flesh and blood. I was looking at a puppet made of forest debris and stolen memories, held together by a will that was older than the trees themselves. I backed away one slow step at a time. I didn't look at its eyes. I looked at the ground, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. That's when the deer spoke. It didn't sound like an animal, it sounded like me. "Who's there?" it whispered. It was a perfect recording of my own voice down to the slight tremor of fear I'd had just seconds ago. I didn't wait. I turned and I ran. I didn't care about the rules anymore. I didn't care about my ankles or the rocks. I just needed to get to the truck. Behind me, I could hear it. It wasn't the sound of hooves. It was the sound of something heavy running on two legs, snapping branches like they were toothpicks. I reached the truck and fumbled with the keys, my hands shaking so violently I dropped them into the mud. As I bent down to grab them, the whistling started again. Not just one voice. Dozens. The woods were suddenly filled with the sound of my brother, my father, and myself, all whistling that same two-note melody in a discordant, overlapping chorus. I scrambled into the cab and slammed the door, locking it just as a pale, elongated hand slapped against the driver's side window. It had 5 fingers, but they were too long, ending in black, jagged nails that looked like flint. I didn't look up. I floored it, the tires screaming as I tore down the dirt road. Dinasa. I quit the next morning. I didn't even go back for my gear. When I told the head ranger why, he didn't look surprised. He just handed me a glass of water and told me I was lucky. "It almost had your cadence," he said. "Another minute and you would have walked right to it." I live in the city now. I like the noise, I like the sirens and the traffic. But sometimes when the wind blows through the vents of my apartment just right, I hear it. 2 notes, sharp and clear. And I know that out there in the dark heart of the mountains, something is still wearing my voice. Was it a ghost, a cryptid, or something older than the mountains themselves? You decide. But if you're ever in Appalachia and you hear a familiar voice calling from the trees, keep walking. Sleep well. This has been Somnia Vault. Subscribe for more stories. Click the linked video below for better sleep. Good night.